opportunity to still demo this, even if it's not in person with several of you guys. We're going to be demoing Gravity Sketch today, making a power drill. Just try to think of something that's a little bit utilitarian, not very, very like heavy, specified, I guess, in the industrial space. And we didn't want to do like a piece of furniture, so we felt that power drill would be a good way to go. We're going to be using the tethered VR headset. This is the Oculus Rift S. It's made by Lenovo. It's got 5 cameras and inside-out tracking, which means it's tracking the controllers based on this ring here. And there's pretty much all you need is just the headset and the controllers. It's plugged into my desktop computer, which has a RTX card in it right now, but I've just switched from a Titan card, so NVIDIA graphics card. You can run a gaming card or you can run an enterprise card. It's totally as you wish. Gravity Sketch, everything you see here does run on the Oculus Quest, which is an all-in-one mobile device with the same controller layout. So everything applies to that platform as well. Both of the headsets are roughly $400, 400 euros, 400 pounds. And the caveat is that if you have this headset, you obviously need a pretty expensive computer. Please do stop us or stop me anywhere in the session, or put your comments in the box anywhere in the session, and we can address them on the fly as we go through it. So for those of you that are new to Gravity Sketch, this is a 3D sketching tool. There's a lot more to it. It's pretty much like a design platform is what we're building. But you can essentially sketch out ideas in free space. So we've created this tool, which is our ink tool. It should flow like ink coming out of the tip of your pen. You can rearrange your things and move everything in space. I'm just focusing on the right controller right now because that's your dominant hand, or your left controller if you want to switch it over. If you're left-handed, that could be your dominant hand. You just tap these two things together. And so you can grab by the sphere in the middle of your hand. You intersect and you can grab. You get a little red halo when you're intersecting something. And you can edit by grabbing this and changing the color. That's one of the edit options you can do. So you grab it and hold the color button. It's a 3D color selection with full saturations on the edge. And then we have 4 materials across the top, including a reflective material and a essentially no properties material. So essentially fades away into the background. So let's just remove all of that. You have an undo button here on the right hand as well, which is just like a control Z. And you can also do a history clock here. So you can roll back time or you can roll forward time on your left hand with your joystick. All right, that's pretty much all you need to know to get started. As we progress with the session, you'll see more features will pop up. So as we're gonna try to treat this as a workflow, what we'll do is we'll bring in a model to work from. So let's say we've got a piece of engineering data and we're gonna make a power drill. So the engineer is giving me this. This is made in SolidWorks. I'm going to grab this and put it into our space. I have my scaling set because inside the 3D world, you're in meters. So I have my scaling set to millimeters here, and you could just hover over and you'll see the millimeter pop up on my hand. So all I need to do is grab that and pop it into here. And then I can scale this up to 100%. Oh, a bit too high now. And that should roughly be the exact size that the power drill would be if it was in my hand. Cool. And I've only imported the critical components. I had to do a little bit of a sketch of like roughly what the side view of the grip would be or what I'd like it to be. And just the critical components that I can't move or can't be adjusted or changed based on the design. And potentially there's some other constraints here that we can include later. So I can quickly just start sketching out ideas. But because this is a symmetrical design, I probably want to turn on my mirror. So I'll come over here and hit the blue button here, which is going to be my settings. Click on the sketch settings here, which is the little cogs. Anything in Gravity Sketch that has a border, I can just grab that, keep that docked in my space. And right now I have vertical lock on, which means I can't twist or get under that thing without lifting it up. So I can turn that off and now I can flip this any which way. And just to make sure that I'm not actually breaking its orientation, so when I export this, this goes into SolidWorks or Rhino or whatever software I want to use properly, I'll just turn on my world axis and to make sure, okay, yeah, that's correct. So you're actually moving yourself. You're the camera. You're not moving the object. Now you can move the object by intersecting with it and grabbing it, and now I've moved the object. But when I'm grabbing with my left hand, I'm just moving the whole space. So what I want to do here is I'll turn that off. I want to turn on my mirror, and now everything I draw will be symmetrical. But I don't want these things to clash on the same layer, because I don't ever want to do that. I never want to grab this thing and pull it apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer for that. So I'm going to go back into my settings. I'm going to click on my layers. Again, this has a little border, so I'm going to dock that in my space. Create another layer, and I'm going to lock layer 1. And now I can't grab that. Now, if you have something that you might want to make some adjustments to, you can grab the object and break the object apart with a little break command. And now I can pull this thing apart, but we don't want to do that at the moment. So we'll keep that locked, and we'll now move into the sketching phase. I also don't like the way that the shadows are casted here. So I'm going to come into my workspace, and I'm going to grab my flashlight here and just shine the light directly at the object. And so this panel in settings, you have pretty much anything that kind of enhances your sketch. There's some kind of detailed settings here where you might manually want to change to left hand and so forth. And then you have your working environments, which we can explore a little bit later. And now I could just loosely freeform sketch out an idea. And actually I'm going to follow some of my original ideas. And so I'm not being precious at all. Often when we think about 3D, we think, okay, this has got to be like millimeter precise. But here we want to be gesturally precise. We want to have that creative fidelity that we have with pen and paper. And I can work at any angle, at any scale. So there's going to be some sort of thing going on here. All right, so I'm being super loose, like pretty dirty sketch. But for the most part, it's giving me a good sense of what's going on. All this crap I don't want here, so let's just get rid of some of that. So maybe get rid of that line there. And I know that this is going to have some sort of profile here. And it's still a bit chunky, so let me just grab some stuff and move it in. Not bad. And so what I can do from this stage is I can grab another layer, and this layer above, I'm going to lock that as well, but I'm going to also change its opacity. So now I have this nice underlay. And then I can go into my tool set panel, which we haven't talked about yet, but the tools panel on your left hand, the violet button. You have 6 basic tools in Gravity Sketch, and we're going to go into our stroke tool. Now I want to actually play with some of the settings in the stroke tool. So I'll click again. So double clicking opens up the tool properties. And again, it has a border. So I'm going to dock it. And so you can see really quickly here that I have my working space, my panel. And here I can change, in this quadrant, I can change the input modes. And so this one is going to be point input, which means I can just lay down control points one by one. So we're going to go and do that. And we're going to see if we can follow some of the profile here. Okay. Just going to follow some of the idea that I had from earlier. It's kind of like ray gun style. I think it's definitely not a conventional Bosch drill or something. Feel free to ask questions as I go through this. There's quite a few features in here that we probably won't cover if they're not asked, but they're very easy to discover if you're using the tool. And so I have like a loose wireframe here, and now I can drop out my underlay altogether. I can even change the opacity here a little bit on my drill components or my engineering components. And now we can go into the editing. So to edit, we'll grab a stroke, and then we'll press the edit button, which is the blue button. So it's contextual. Once I grab it, these buttons change. And now I have my control points that have popped up and a new panel for editing that. And so you have some parametric constraints here. So I can always change the thickness of my stroke or the cross section, but I'll keep it at the minimum there. I can loop it if I want to loop it, but that's obviously not what I want to do. And I can change the caps. I can change if it's mirrored or not mirrored. I'm going to keep it as mirrored. But there's quite a few things you could do here. I can change the cross section as well as a square or a diamond stroke. If you grab the control points the same way that you would grab content and you move it close to the mirror plane, it snaps. So I'm going to snap all that to the mirror plane. All right. And another thing is if I wanted to keep the sketch nature, of that kind of ink stroke that we were playing with in the beginning. Because when I switch to the stroke tool, it's just an even thickness. So I still want this to feel a little bit like a sketch. So I'll pull that out a little bit. And what I can do is I can go left and right on my joystick and I'll add a nice taper to that. So now it feels a lot like a sketch. I'll do the same thing with the backside here. Pull this out. You could add CVs by grabbing and pulling the trigger, or you can just add it by pulling the trigger and pointing where you want them. And you can delete CVs by grabbing and holding it and then pressing the red button. You see the red button here turns from a back, kind of a Control-Z button, into a delete button or a minus button. All right. So then we'll just get that slightly lined up, something I like. And now this section here needs a bit of work. And I'll try to actually do the full cross section. You could start directly in the stroke tool, but I do like starting a little bit loose and sketching because it doesn't feel like I'm constructing something in a CAD software. It feels very much like I'm exploring an idea. And so, you know, we've primarily been focused on transportation and automotive design, but there's a lot of crossover from that industry with the way that industrial design is done. And primarily, you know, industrial design works a lot faster than like the 6-year, you know, 5 to 6 year timeline that a car is built at. And so these tools we were thinking actually could be a lot more pertinent to the industrial design workflow than the automotive workflow, just based on the timelines and the timeframes that industrial designers have to work under. So here we'll just play with the cross section and I'll just grab this. And you'll see that I'm lining up my controllers every once in a while. And what that's doing is it's restricting the movement. So if my controllers are in line, like when you like push a piece of wood through a plane, your hands line up. And that's the type of UX that we want to bring to the tool. This really physical way, like you're digitally crafting as opposed to like clicking and dragging and pointing. You know, we feel that's really what breaks the creative flow, is when you're like kind of doing 3 or 4 steps and all these hotkeys to try to get something out. It should feel natural. It should feel more like you're playing with a piece of foam.
Shay, we've got a question in from Parker, who wants to kind of know about dropping in primitives like a circle whilst you're sketching. Sure.
Yeah. So we don't have any stroke primitives, but we do have primitives here where you can drop in solid primitives, right? So if I was to I can drop in a couple of cubes here if I wanted to. If I wanted to say, okay, there's probably going to be some sort of connection here between the battery and the components. I can drop in a sphere, and you can also change and augment the shape of the sphere. It might help if I change the color. Actually, I got to change the material too. I can drop in pyramids, cones. So you got a lot of primitives to play with on the solid side. We will be adding primitives for the sketch primitives. It's just a matter of time, but those will be coming to the tool as well. All right. And then we'll just do a little bit of editing up here. So for the sake of this demo, I won't go too deep into all of the features, but I'll just give you a flavor for how this could be used in a workflow. And the last thing I want to do is actually, let's just tighten this backside up a little bit. So this is, it should be really clear that this is not a replacement to your Rhino or your SolidWorks. This is just something to help you lay down the more organic, aesthetic components of the design and give you a nice template to work from once you hand off to either the engineering team or you yourself are going to jump into the next software. And so some of these complex curves are really hard to understand behind a screen. And so getting these things laid out in this way will help you just have a bit more conviction in the design. And so you don't necessarily have to make compromises, or at least you're knowing what kind of compromises are being made and why they're being made, as opposed to being a bit of a slave to the keyboard and mouse dynamic that we have in most of the tools that we use. Actually, I'm going to bring this in a little bit here. Anyways, you get the point. You could play with this for a long time, but think for this, we need to move on.
Yeah, just got a couple questions, Shay. Maybe Parker, if you want to come off mute, maybe you can ask your question.
Parker? You there?
He's asking, well, he's not coming off mute, but he's asking about tangency across the mirror plane.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the same way that we have this constrained movement, that's how you keep your tangency. So let's say right now my mirror plane has this pinch to it. If I wanted to make that tangent, I'd back this off of the line and I'd make a duplication by pulling the trigger. And now those 2 points are on the same line, and that preserves the tangency. In some of our other editing modes and editing features, we do have tangency baked in when it comes to the subdivision modeling, which we'll jump into in a second here. And that's quite helpful. We will be rolling that out across the platform as well. So it's just about a matter of time before that just becomes the de facto standard. We found that a lot of people do want to maintain tangency across the mirror. All right, so the next thing we'll do is we'll start exploring some surfacing. And I brought in an image here. And right now my image is part of my UI. It's almost just like a mood board inspiration. And to bring in images, you have a little image panel here. And you just intersect and you grab, just like you would grab any other piece of content. So I have this as like an inspiration, but I can also bring these in more of like the ergonomic understanding. I like to work to this degree, so I could just flip it over. These are PNGs or JPEGs, either one works. And now we're going to jump into some surfacing tools. So in the surface mode, you have a tension slider, and you can go into 4-point surfaces. It's by default, this will be a 3-point surface, and all the way at zero tension, you'll have a 2-point surface. And we're going to change the color. If there's any color requests, I'm happy to take them, but I'm going to go with a blue if there isn't. And you can see here, when you pull the left trigger, you get a preview. And when you pull the right trigger, you start making the surface. And also, I've realized I don't have any material applied to this. So I'm going to apply a gloss material to this. Go into my reflective material.
Had a request for yellow.
Yellow, absolutely. So go yellow, and I'm not going to do a super bright yellow. I'll do like a little bit of a matted yellow so I don't burn my eyes out. There we go. And so you have like this, a little bit of sheen, and I'll show you how to get this to really pop in a different environment after we kind of work through the model a bit. And so here I can just come in and I can lay down some surfaces. So that's one surface I'll pull across here. And for this one, I know that I'm going to want my surfaces to stick to these 2 curves. I'm going to want to do some sort of sweep. And so we have this feature here called bridge curves. It is in beta. There's a few things that we need to improve on this one to make it really robust, but it's quite nice. So when you come in and hover over, you'll get a preview of those 2 curves, and then you pull the trigger and you just draw it across the 2 curves there. And then we'll do a little bit of something over here as well. Actually, I'll go back to, I like working freeform. Some people really rely on that to keep that, perfect between the 2 curves, but I like to be a little bit free. And you'll see what I mean, because when you're playing with strokes, it's all nice, but when you start getting to volumes, it's really nice just to kind of push and pull like you're playing with like malleable clay or something like that. And I'll just do the backside here. And you'll see that I'm not trying to get these things to line up. And the reason for that is because I actually want to go in and start editing them. So the same way I was editing my strokes. One thing I didn't do is I didn't make another layer. And I do want to do that. So I'm going to make another layer, and I have everything now on this one layer, or all my strokes and my surfaces and my images. So to move things across layers, you just grab them and you just shove them in the layer. And you see that here that the little box will turn green, and watch what happens here. It just pops right back into place. So I'll grab that. I'm going to grab all my yellow bits and just shove them into the layer. We'll zoom in and grab this guy here. And this last one here. Perfect. And now my strokes are on one layer, and I want my images on another layer as well. So I'm just going to grab these images and pull them into this layer. And that way I can just lose the strokes if I need to, or I can turn them down and I can lock them. And they can come in and now do some editing. And so I'll just push and pull. And the same thing here, when you get to the mirror and you want to keep that tangency, you can go into your edit modes by left and right on the joystick will change what you're editing. So now I'm editing a full isoparm. If I go the other direction, I'm editing this one. Let me just make sure this is all lined up. And so if I pull this off the mirror and then make a duplicate and pull it to the mirror, I've now maintained tangency across the mirror. I'm just going to undo that because I still want to tweak this a little bit. Feel free to ask any questions about surfacing as well. We're going to go from NURB surfacing. So this is all NURBS math. This will come like for like as an IGES export directly to SolidWorks or Rhino. But we are going to go from NURBS into polygonal modeling.
So just got a few questions coming in, Shay.
Yep.
I'm going to see if Sam wants to come, Sam Moon wants to come off mute and ask his question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Sam.
Hey, so yeah, I was just curious, you've got like the vertical sketch lines that you built for the handle, and then you've got sort of the horizontal profiles. Are you able to lock those together, or is that more just like for reference?
You mean like connect these curves together?
Yeah.
Point connection?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have some snapping tools, and I'll just explore those outside of the sketch just to keep the flow going.
Sure.
So what I'll do is I'll just do a quick little demo out here. I'm gonna turn off mirror for this. So if I have a curve here, and you have something like this, you can come in and edit this guy up, and I'll back this guy down a little bit. And so then I can turn on my snap feature. And so when I grab a point and I hover, you see that I can get the red points populated. This is actually really hard to see with this color. Let's go a little bit lighter. So when I grab this point, I can snap it to any of the points. Now we're working on snapping a long curve, so you'll be able to snap anywhere on that section, but at the moment it's snapping point to point. And so then I can keep those things snapped. I'll make a duplication of that, do the same thing here. At the moment, we don't. I know what your next question is probably, can you patch that? So that's a bit of future tech that we want to build in. So at the moment, we haven't really gone super deep into the surface manipulation tools, and that's primarily because we still think there's a lot of value in just focusing in on the creative aspect before going straight into model mode. But as people start using the tool and some of our customers get deeper and deeper into it, we find that they just naturally move into that direction, and it's less of a like a breaking of the creative flow, and just like it's a continuation of the creative flow. And so one thing that we're really, really focused on is the user experience. So if we can make something that feels right and doesn't break this kind of flow that I'm in, right? I don't have to punch any numbers. I don't have to like click 2 points and hit control something. I'm just in it, right? And so as long as we can maintain that, we'll be adding as many complex features as possible, as long as it doesn't degrade the experience.
Just gonna ask Alex, AJ, if you want to come off mute as well, and we've got a couple questions.
Sure, how's it going? And thanks for giving this very thorough explanation of everything. It's really helpful. Yeah, a couple questions. Is there a spot where I can see basically all of the gestures or all the hotkeys in one spot?
Yep, there is. There is a, Max, you might want to link this in the chat, but there is a user guide that's a Google Doc, and we keep that. We haven't updated it in a while because we've been just head down on this next update. But we do keep that pretty well updated usually, so you can check that out, and that will give you, like, it has little GIFs and kind of walks you through a lot of the user experiences that we have baked in. There's also in the application, if you're already in app, just go ahead and hit that blue button, and you'll see this little like Studious cap here. Click on that, and you can walk through different videos, and I can just pull that up. And I can scrub through that video and just pause it along the way in different sections. And then I can watch and I can stop and continue sketching. So that's another way that you can learn and onboard yourself. All right, so now I want to just check out some reflections. And again, I haven't really gone super deep into connecting everything up, and I'm doing that intentionally because I really do think that there's a huge power in going polygonal in terms of the modeling. Like I could stay NURBS, but I think it's too finicky, and you'll see why, because we really nailed the experience on the polygon modeling. But I do want to check a couple of highlights here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my settings, and I'm going to go into my workspace here. Oh, actually, I already had it open. And so now I have these custom workspaces, but let's just go across the presets. So I'm in my preset workspace here, which is just this gridded floor. I can go into a black workspace here. It's a bit more mood light. And I can go into this warehouse environment. And now I can see how the reflections of the environment are hitting off of the surfaces. And then if I really want to get more detailed in, I can go into this kind of soft box and that I get some of that, what I would see in a normal CAD package. Or I can go even deeper into customization. And when I click on customization, now I have my zebra stripe and I can change the color of the background. I could turn off my shadows. I could turn off the floor. I could turn on or off the floor and adjust the grid on the floor. So you can go really, really deep in this. But what I like here is that I'm seeing that I have a nice tangency. The zebra stripe is flowing the way I want it to flow off that top surface here. I'm probably going to add something in here that's like a nice kind of accent. That's why I haven't snapped these together. Same with these. But I'm going to do that in the polygonal modeling mode. So I'll just jump over into this flat environment, and we're going to explore like the next depth. And I'm going to just drop out the sketch lines for now. And so what we'll do is we'll come in and edit. And on this edit panel, it's a little bit different than the stroke edit panel, as it has a few different features. And then you have this convert to sub-D. And again, this is beta. So some of these features may not come out exactly as you wish them. And you'll see here, I always like to point out things in the product that we are improving. But if I click on this, you'll see here that I lost that sharp edge. Now we do have creasing coming, so that will be solved relatively soon. And now I can just come in and push and pull in the same way, but now I can grab full faces as well, right? So if I wanted to add like an accent, I can just pull that out. And using your joystick, I can like make that wider or less wide. And I do have history here, right? So I can just roll back history and I don't lose any of that. So let's go here. If I click on here, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so Paul was just asking about connecting two separate surfaces as well.
Yep, so that's exactly what we're getting to, Paul. So what I'll do now is, so if I toggle through, I can go points, faces, and edges, and I can go just faces. So you have like kind of all the I don't know if some of you guys are familiar with T-splines, but you have that same kind of T-splines workflow. And then I actually want to make this whole thing a polygonal model. So I'm going to go in and edit this guy as well, convert him, come in here, convert this one, and here, convert, and here, convert. And now we're going to bring this all together. So now I go back into my editing. You could edit any of these, right? So I'll come into here. And there's a little tool set. This is, again, quite a beta feature, but we have this little tool set here, which will allow me to smooth, cut, and merge. So I'm going to grab the merge. I'm going to merge this guy, this one, and now everything's all connected. Or at least it's all editable as the same mesh. And so then I'm just going to pull faces or pull edges and connect them up together. I was going to do a little detail, but I didn't really rehearse that too well. So I think we're just going to do like a solid body. But you're essentially going to make a full solid mesh of this all in one go. So it's not going to be broken into separate parts. You can get very detailed, but for the sake of this demo, I think it's best that we just use the time to show some of the feature sets and not try to be too prescriptive. If you guys are interested in learning a bit more, definitely reach out to Max and we can share some material from the community, people who have gone like much deeper into stitching things together, adding part lines, things like that. But for the sake of this demo, it's just going to be helpful just to kind of walk through these tool sets so you guys all understand. And this one's a bit weird. So what we're going to do is delete that face. So sometimes these artifacts happen. Yeah, now that's fully.
Pietro, do you want to ask your question as well?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to know if you can change the amount of influence that edges and points have on the subdivision.
Yeah,
so
creasing.
Creasing.
Creasing is actually in our beta. It will be released on July 15th is our target date.
Okay.
Beta release. Yeah. So creasing, there's a couple of really awesome things in the beta as well. Like there's some more surface manipulation tools. So I might want to smooth this out a little bit. So I'll grab my smooth tool. And so I just smooth this out. And you could change the influence of the smooth tool up and down your joystick. And if I wanted to add any parts in here that are non-quad, I just grab my cut tool and I can cut across things. And again, I have that history, so I could just roll back history when I want. And because I had that smoothing, it kind of pulled this off the mirror. So I'll join that back up. And I'm just going to try to plow through this really quickly, guys, so we can get to the next bit. And then we'll just join this up. And as a quick, like, first idea, this hasn't really costed me much time. Like, this is just an idea. This is just a concept I want to share. I have a bit of 3D data I can actually pass over to the engineering team now. They could tell me, okay, this isn't going to work. This is going to work. And I haven't invested a whole lot of time. And it's 3D, so I haven't had to, you know, do 6 or 7 sketches so they clearly understand what I'm trying to convey here. And that's really where we want to see the tool excel, is in that concept ideation phase. Now, there's another tool that I'm going to show you guys in Sub D. And a lot of these tools that we played with here, they're all experimental. But what's great is that they're all going to come over into our NURBS modeling package as well. We just went really far with the subdivision modeling. And so we haven't really stopped and jumped back into our NURBS tech yet. But all these kind of grabbing by quads and specific editing modes, this will all come over into NURBS as well. All right, so let's just bring that up here. Okay, and so this next bit here is about soft selection. So there's areas in here that I might want to like fall off. There's areas in here that I might want to just push and pull and just nudge. So what I'll do is I'll use my joystick to increase the size of my grab nothing, and I'll just tap the joystick down. And now I have higher influence in the center, lower influence on the outside, and you have a logarithmic effect across the two. So you can see here that I have like a nice soft push and like, cool. I'll just see how tight I can get. Now, obviously, if this is injection molding, I need to be really cognizant of the thickness, but we're just gonna assume that I'm gonna do thickness outward. So let's get it as tight and as possible to the engineering components. And then this handle here, I want to bring this in. Cool. And then just to undo, you just grab nothing and use your joystick to go upward. And I want to add a span in here. So to add a span, you just come over here to one of these lines that's connecting the 2 rows, and you just pull the trigger. Half pull the trigger, and you get a nice preview. And if you pull the trigger completely, you drop the line, you drop the row in there. If I want to grab full rows, I have an option to do that here. So I'll just grab here, and I can grab that full row, and I can move that full row. And I can do the full row of faces as well. So there's quite a few tools in here. But yeah, for the time being, I'm pretty happy. Go ahead.
If you wanted to take some measurements of this, how could you do it?
Yeah, so if I wanted to measure a couple of things here, it's a good question. Sorry, just now I'm in the flow, guys. Sorry. So what I would do is we have another set of beta features, and this is all pretty beta stuff. So this won't be in the download that you would grab off of the Oculus platform. And we have some funny icons here because we like to be a little bit playful in our development pipeline. But you would just grab this little tape measure here by reaching out and grabbing it, and you would find the point that you want to measure, and you would measure it. And so, okay, cool. I know that's roughly 7, 8 centimeters. That's roughly what I expected. And then once you close this down, that goes away. So it's just a quick validation and then moving forward. That will be folded into a more robust tool set, but at the moment it's like this. All right, cool. So now I'm pretty happy with what we're looking at here. Obviously it will need much more work, but for the sake of this demo, it kind of does the job. And I'm going to make this full opacity on the components. And I'll bring in a hand model just to validate that what I've done kind of makes sense. So I have that in my mannequin prefabs. This could just be a hand. This was like a hand that was modeled for, I think it was a gaming asset or something like that. So I'll bring that in. I'm not really worried about the size of that. So I'm just bringing it in normal and just checking a couple of things. It might be a little bit smaller here. And now I would really like to pose that hand, but I can't. So what I'll do is I'll bring in, we have a rigged mannequin, bring that one in. And so here on these are built-in models. These are models that we give you with the app. And you have a couple of things across the top here. You have a torso, you have a face, and you have a car chassis. So we'll bring in a mannequin here. Actually, I'm gonna bring in a woman. We'll drop her in. And so by dropping her in, she comes in at scale. And I can just rotate her around. And I'll just focus in on the hand. So here we'll have to just move the hand into a position I think makes sense. Actually, let's bring it more. I actually have some images that I imported just to kind of give myself a sense of how someone might be holding a drill. And I think this kind of thing where you're putting a drill bit in is an interesting gesture to understand. So I just need to move the mannequin forward a little bit. So how does this play out and if you toggle over, you can go into like point by point. So you could turn off the inverse kinematics, come in and see how that might look and feel. And now I can come in and actually pose the hand exactly as I wish. I want to be really specific, not to move my model, but to move the mannequin, because I'm going to keep everything pretty much lined up for when I export into another software. So I'll just tighten the grip here. Or another gesture that I think is really interesting is putting the battery pack in. And so everything in Gravity Sketch, all the interactions are almost like 3 or 4. It's essentially grab with your sphere, pull the trigger, check mark, grab, and click a button to access additional features. Cool. Yeah, and so now I've kind of run a simulation. Let's just get rid of the hand here. And I could say, okay, this is good enough to send over to the engineering team, or I could say, you know, that's actually not the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise is for me to get a couple of really good perspectives for my Photoshop underlay. And so what I'll do here is I'll just jump over. I'm just keeping track of time. We have a time here on the hand, so cool, I got a bit more time here. I'll just jump over to our save window, and you have a lot of different ways of saving. You can save, export. We'll run through these in a moment here, but I'm going to go over here and take a screenshot. And so now this is actually just as powerful as getting out your 3D model, because you can start storytelling here. And so now this person is holding the drill. I can get really tight in with my focal length. I can change the focus. And so then I just take a screenshot, and I'll show you where that pops up a bit later. I can also add the screenshot directly to the sketch by just turning add quad in sketch. Take that screenshot, and now that's here in my sketch. And so I'll keep that in the environment. It is part of the sketch now, because if I add it to the sketch, it now actually becomes a material, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so we'll keep that as part of the sketch. Cool, so that's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer I'm happy to answer questions here around the tools or any additional features. There's loads of stuff I've left out, not intentionally, but just because it gets quite expansive. But if there's any questions, Max, I'm happy to answer those at this time. If not, we can move on to something else.
Yeah, nothing in at the moment.
Okay. Cool, so the next bit would be to actually take this into the next stage of my workflow. And so all I really want to focus on is, I have all this engineering data, but I'll keep it all together actually. And I want to bring that into, I'll bring in my strokes and curves as well. I want to bring that into Rhino. And I'm going to actually not bring that out. Keep all that cool. And so what we'll do here is we'll come back over here to save. And just because my active layer is invisible, let me just turn to a layer that's visible here. It turns off. So I'll come over here to save, and I will turn off cloud saving. So we have a cloud system that saves to. I'll turn that off, and I will just save or export it as a FBX. And I'm going to do NURBS and mesh data will come together, welded vertices. You kind of have all the settings that you want here. You can hit check there, and I'll label this drill. Done. And it'll take a moment to save. And I'll also save it as a regular Gravity Sketch file as well. So we'll just save this to our drill, save. And then I think the last thing I want to do actually is save it. as an IGIS as well. I'm sure many of you guys would like to see that. So let's export as IGIS, and yep, Z-axis up. Actually, the model is in millimeters, which I don't think I did for my other one, so I'll have to do that again. Save, and I'll save it as OBJ as well. Let's put that in millimeters welded. Check mark. Drill. Great. All right, this takes a minute because we actually have to do the converting on the system. All right, and so now we'll just jump out and we'll show you what this looks like in Rhino. I'm gonna have to stop screen sharing for a moment, so this is a great time to get some questions in, and I'll re-screen share when I have Rhino open.
Yeah, we had a question about mechanical movements.
Is this like constrained movements, or
can
we get more specific with that question?
Yeah, Gert, do you want to come off mute?
Yes, hello. Thank you for showing us this thing today. Great things. I was just curious because we're working a lot with different mechanical movements, like things like a bed going into something, or movements when you have a patient on a bed and you want to visualize how things move, and a lot of ergonomics and so.
Yeah, so we don't have any of that kind of like you'd hinge and move something in that fashion. That's stuff that we are exploring with. We were thinking now maybe to move from a creation mode into like a more evaluation mode, and hopefully we'll have enough time to touch on that. I'm just going to try to do this in 5 minutes, show you guys what it looks like in Rhino, just so you have a sense of what things look like in the actual in like the native CAD environment. Okay. But those are ideas that we're starting to populate a lot. Like what we did was we came out and we started with focusing on just the front end of the design workflow, which was, you know, you're doing everything in 2D in perspective, but you're actually thinking in 3D. And now that we have a few customers on board and we started to work quite closely, we're finding that actually there's a lot more in the design workflow that users would highly benefit from once they start getting baked into the tool. Okay. So that's definitely something we want to further explore. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Thanks.
Yep, not a problem. And this time I'm going to share my full desktop. And as you can see here, I've opened up Rhino already. I've done anything special here. And I'll come over to this PC. I'll come into my documents and Gravity Sketch. And here in Gravity Sketch, you can find your import library. This is where we found all the imports, fonts. We have some 3D texting features and stuff like that, which we can talk about later, or I don't know if we'll have time in this session. But what we'll draw our focus to here is on our exported sketches. And here in exported sketches, I have my drill. I'll just drag that over, and now I can hit import the file. And so that comes in, and so as we don't bring out any of your mesh. We only export the geometry that you created in Gravity Sketch. And so what you'll see here is that, and then let me go into rendered mode. But what you'll see here is that this came out like for like, and you have all your strokes, and all these strokes, if I just turn on the points, you get the exact points from Gravity Sketch come through. So you can continue editing in that fashion. So if you just wanted to do like a wireframe of something, that would be amazing, because you could just drop it in someone that's a surfacing expert and they can just go straight from that wireframe. And then you also have that sub D. So how does sub D come over? And we're using version 5 of Rhino, right? So how did this come over? Well, this actually came over as NURBS patches. So we patched that on our side and gave you the NURBS patches. If you have Rhino 7, it comes over as sub D and you continue in sub D. Now the layers come over like for like as well. So we can hide that because that was our layer. I don't know why it got at the end. I think I accidentally hit the layer and it went to 4N. So I can get rid of that altogether. I'm just playing with my curves, or I can get rid of the strokes and now I just have my surfaces. Cool, so that's good. And that came over at 1:1 scale. So I'm pretty happy with that. I stayed in millimeters. There's loads of areas I could have done a bit better, but obviously for the time, don't judge me on my design skills. And so that what we'll do now is we'll just Control Z out of that and we'll look at the other import. So if you are a dedicated Rhino user, what you can do is you can just pull over the Let's just pull into exported. You can pull over the Gravity Sketch file itself. So I can go into saved sketches, and I'll go into my drill, and you get a lot of stuff that comes up, including all your meshes and your zip folder. So we zip everything together. I'm just gonna grab my GRS file. I'm gonna drag that GRS file in, and then I get the import dialog. Now, this one, you have to get the plugin from us, but that allows you to drag it directly into Gravity Sketch. I'm gonna do millimeters in my dialog, and that allows you to bring Gravity Sketch directly over. Okay, and now what I have here is everything from Gravity Sketch. That's the whole Gravity Sketch file, including all the layers and its structure. And you can start to come through and just kind of turn off some of those. So turn off layer 1, turn off layer, and I can suppress these. This is all, it's all like folded open like this because we wrote this for a customer that requested it this way, but you can actually have this come in any way you want. We just haven't allowed that kind of customization yet. But now what I get here, which is really interesting, is I got that nice gestural sketch, and those come in the form of a NURBS tube. So now I have that geometry that the sketch was part of. And if I deploy the layer here, sorry, that's my notification. If I deploy the layer here, I could turn off geometry, and now I have just the curves on one side because I don't need the mirrored side. The mirrored side is purely for visual. Just curves on one side, and again, I have like for like, the control points like for like. And then you have base strokes as the geometry. That was what we just exposed. And then you'd have any kind of construction geometry. So if you're working with anything planar or radial, which we didn't walk through those tools, you'd have the plane, or you'd have the center line of the revolve. So we try to give as much information as possible. Now, because we have a mesh, sub-D mesh, this just comes in as the control mesh. So you can't do anything in Rhino 5 because there are no subdivision tools, but you can bring that over if you want to just have it as a stopgap on your way to Maya or something and you want to do a couple things on the file. Or it does work as a good converter. Like Rhino is an amazing converter if you need to convert something into another file format. So that's, I mean, it really depends on how you use Rhino in your tool chain. Great, so I think we have just a few more minutes, and I'm wondering if we have time, Max, to jump in. If Emil's on the call, we have time to jump into collaboration and just give a little sneak peek on that.
Yeah, Emil's on the call, so we should have time.
All right, and it looks like Emil's sharing his screen. So I'll jump in and we'll make, can we make Emil the presenter? Is that possible?
Yep.
If not, I can do it on my side. I'll jump into Gravity Sketch and I'll just jump out really quickly and I'll turn this drill into a collaboration tool. It'll take me a minute. Great. And so now I'll just go and find my drill. Bear with me for a moment, guys. And Emil's idly standing by. Emil, you'll probably need to wait until I have this brought over. And drill.
Great. Are you creating the room, Shay?
That's right. I'm just gonna try to create the room with the drill. If I can't do that because I have so many files on this computer I'm like swiping through. If I can't do that in time, well, I'll just make a new room and then we can just show some of the power of just working together.
Cool. You could save it as a prefab as well, and we can hop in a new room and you can pop it up.
Yeah, let me do that. I'll do that really quickly.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'll save this as a prefab quickly. Bear with us, guys. And then we'll do this in space. Great. And prefabs. Just grab this. Boom. Drill. Great. So in this case, do you want to set up the room, Emil?
Sure, I'll start one now.
Yep. I'll just jump in when I see you. Are you naming it something special or? Yep, gotcha.
It should be called ID room.
Yep. Cool. All right. So if you look on Emil's screen now, you'll see that I'm here. He's there. We can scale ourselves up, and now we're going to work together, or at least let's say Emil is actually going to review it from maybe like design management perspective, or he's running the project with the client, and say our client's manufacturing.
I don't see anything on my screen yet. Is there supposed to be something showing?
Okay.
Oh.
Are you guys seeing my screen?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So are we in good shape, guys? Yep. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to bring the drill in. Great. So the drill's here now. Actually didn't grab all the pieces, but we have some artifacts in here. Now we'll just come in and just fix a couple things here. But now we can work collaboratively or review collaboratively the model. And he can call it a few things that might need adjustment or changing. Now, maybe call out this crease here that I would like to be working. And so you can see Amos used some of the 3D text. Pull the battery pack out. And so here you can actually just have a deeper, more rich discussion around the model, what might need to change, some of the things that maybe weren't considered in the initial design. And what's great about this is that I can then do several versions of this design. So I'm going to grab this guy, make a duplicate, and now we have 4 different versions to review. And so on the first one, Amos removed the battery pack and called out a couple things there. And Amos, if we come over to the next one here, on this side, we might want to, maybe this is going to be slightly longer, so we're going to bring this part out. And maybe it makes sense to stretch this into a little bit of a longer base. Or maybe we don't like this trigger feature and we can remove that as well. So this is really a feature that is quite beta at the moment. It's quite new for us. We're looking at bringing this to our customers relatively soon. And we've kept it pretty straightforward. So it's really about just getting in here, having a quick discussion, but we'll be adding tools to it based on feedback that we get from the customers around their workflow or how they might want to present or showcase and share some of the work that they're doing. You could also bring in OBJs. So this drill component, engineering components came straight over. So don't necessarily have to just work with Gravity Sketch content. If you have a model that's already fully fleshed out and you just want to come in and annotate or throw some lines and curves on top of that, this also works as a great tool for that. So it could fit in various stages of your workflow. And that's something we're trying to tease out in some of our early customer discussions around industrial design. So Amos brought in a drill there that he's worked with and developed, and he can kind of bring components across and say, hey, maybe we remix this and add a bit here or there. Are there any final questions as we wrap up?
Yeah, nothing that's since come in. There were some just questions again about whether working on Quest is the same experience.
Yeah. So working on Quest is exactly the same. You lose the shadows because it's very expensive to render shadows on the Quest. There's a couple other small details that you'll lose on reflections and things like this. But in terms of the core creation tools, they're identical. You can also collaborate across Quest and Rift and Vive. If you have a Vive, we support all major VR headsets, also Windows Mixed Reality. We'll be very soon coming to screens, so iPad and desktop. And all of those will be playing nicely together. So you can essentially have, maybe the next time we do this session, we'll have all of you guys joining us from a screen or something like this, and you guys can all kind of weigh in and view. So it's really, the device that you use is really about the performance and not about the actual tool set. And by performance, we mean things, again, things like reflections and rendering and things like this. If you're interested in having a demo, please feel free to reach out to Caleb or Max or whoever invited you to this webinar, and we'll be setting up demos towards the tail end of January, or sorry, the tail end of July. I've been mixing these up for a few days now. So that tail end of July, just register your interest with one of them and they'll get you all set up. Well, if that's it,
Yeah.
really appreciate your time. Max, do you have any closing words for everyone?
Oh yeah, just well, a couple of last questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we had the quest one, and then just the voice chat, and for collaboration, do you need to be on the same network, or can it be done remotely?
Yeah. So Emil's in Pittsburgh. Is that right, Emil?
Yep.
Yeah. Emil's in Pittsburgh. I'm here in London. We're facilitating all of this through AWS, so you can be global. Doesn't matter where you are. And what was the other one? Sorry.
Yeah, just the voice chat. Voice chat.
Voice chat works. We're constantly and continuously improving our voice chat tech as well. So it's one of those things where you can have a couple of different settings here, as Emil's sharing you, where you can have that off. And if you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting, you can use your Zoom meeting. Or if you are purely just going peer-to-peer, you can just use audio in Gravity Sketch. But it's this like interesting transition period where we're moving from, these conferences that need to happen behind a screen to conferences that can happen completely in the 3D environment.
Yeah, well, I think that looks like it's all the questions then. Thanks for doing that, Shay. Thanks for your time in the software. Yeah, I guess if there's any questions off the back of any of the things that Shay showed, then as Shay mentioned, reach out to myself or Caleb. And yeah, we've been setting companies up with trials as well, and especially with collaboration. So if that's of interest, then we're also able to set people up with trials at the moment as well. So do get in touch if that's of interest. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. So I guess we'll call it there. Thanks,
Great.
Shay.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining as well. Appreciate it. You guys enjoy the rest of your week.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Paul. We'll get in touch.
We'll get in
Thanks a
touch.
lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Oh.